There are certain moments on television that people never forget. Moments when two titans collide, and the world watches in stunned silence. This is one of those moments. When the embodiment of Hollywood's stoic, old-school masculinity walked onto the stage of modern daytime television, the air was thick with expectation. Clint Eastwood, the man who built a career on icy stares and sharp words, was about to go toe-to-toe with Joy Behar, a woman who never held her tongue, no matter who sat across from her. From the moment the morning crew at The View arrived that day, they knew something different was about to unfold. Clint Eastwood, 94 years old, still sharp as a razor, was coming on the show to promote his latest film, a project already making waves in Hollywood circles. But Joy Behar, battle-hardened after decades in the spotlight, was determined to make this interview about something more, something personal. As the studio audience filled the seats, a charged electricity hung in the air. Everyone could sense it. Something was going to happen. Something unforgettable. The cameras rolled. The lights dimmed. And Clint Eastwood made his entrance. Wearing a simple, perfectly tailored dark suit, Eastwood's weathered hands gripped the chair as he sat, every movement calm, controlled, deliberate. Across from him sat Joy, already leaning forward, her smile thin, her posture tense. Her eyes weren't welcoming. They were locked and loaded. "Clint Eastwood, welcome to The View," Joy began, her tone polite, but just beneath it, a glint of something sharper. "I gotta say, I'm honestly shocked you agreed to come on our show, given how different our audiences must be." The jab was subtle, but not subtle enough to escape Clint's attention. His famous squint appeared for just a flicker, the same look that had unnerved villains on screen for decades. "Well, Joy," Clint responded coolly, "I always believed you can't understand the world if you only talk to people who agree with you." Joy's eyebrows lifted. She wasn't here to make small talk. She pressed forward, her voice tilting into something more aggressive. "That's interesting," she said, already adopting a mocking grin. "Because from what I've seen of your films, and your politics, you seem to prefer a simpler world. You know, shoot first, think later." A quiet ripple moved through the audience. This wasn't the standard softball interview. Clint remained unmoved, like a rock in the storm, his steely gaze fixed on Joy, his voice calm. "You're confusing entertainment with real life, Joy. You see, in my experience, the folks who yap the most usually have the least to say." That line hit like a gut punch. The audience stirred, some stifling gasps, others smirking in delight. "But Joy," she pressed forward, her smile tightening like a snare. "Oh, now we're going to get pearls of wisdom from Hollywood?" Joy snapped, gesturing with exaggerated flair. "Tell me, Clint, what makes you qualified to lecture anyone on anything? You've spent a lifetime playing cowboys and cops." Clint didn't blink, didn't shift. "And you've spent a lifetime playing a character too, Joy," he shot back, his tone sharper now. "Difference is, I know when the camera stops rolling." The tension was now suffocating. The other hosts sat stiff, some exchanging awkward glances, unsure where to look. But Joy, she was just getting started. Her back straightened, her voice rising with each word. "Excuse me," she hissed. "Are you suggesting I'm putting on an act? That I'm not authentic? Because I've been speaking truth to power for decades while you've been playing pretend." Clint leaned back slightly, his fingers intertwined calmly on his lap, his stare unrelenting. "I'm suggesting maybe you should listen more and lecture less," he replied. "You invited me here, not to be a punching bag, but to have a conversation. What you're doing, that's not conversation, that's theater." Joy's laugh rang out, sharp and bitter. "Oh, political theater, is it?" she shot back. "That's rich coming from someone who's spent his career glorifying violence, teaching men that strength means silence and intimidation." The smile crept across Clint's face, that infamous half-smirk. It wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile his on-screen enemies saw, right before things went south. "I've been in this game a long time," Clint said quietly. "Long enough to know the loudest person in the room is usually the weakest. You see, real journalists ask questions to get answers. You ask questions to hear yourself speak." The room pulsed with energy. Even the control room, watching from behind glass, went silent, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let this unfold. Joy, sensing her control slipping, lashed out. "You know what your problem is, Clint," she barked. "You can't handle strong women. You come from a generation where women were expected to sit pretty and stay quiet. But guess what? Those days are gone. That's when it happened." That slow, dangerous grin from Clint Eastwood, the kind that signaled a storm was coming. His voice dropped an octave, each word weighted with undeniable authority. "Joy," he said, "I've worked with the strongest women in Hollywood. Meryl Streep, Frances McDormand, Hilary Swank. Women who earned their respect by building others up, not tearing them down. They didn't mistake loudness for strength." Joy faltered, just a second, but it was enough. The audience caught it. Her eyes darted nervously, her breath uneven, but she recovered, or tried to. "Don't you dare lecture me about strong women," she snapped. "Those women had to play by your rules in your system, while you made millions playing macho caricatures." Clint's tone didn't shift. It remained icy, surgical. "My system?" he asked. "I've given lead roles to women. I've told stories that studios were too scared to touch, while you've made a career out of complaining." Joy slammed her hand on the desk. "I've been fighting for justice while you've promoted toxic masculinity." Clint didn't move, didn't blink. "Joy, you've confused honesty with aggression. You've mistaken being loud for being right. And you've called it journalism." The studio air turned heavier, thicker. You could almost hear the producers scrambling in the control room, whispering, debating. Should they intervene or let the storm rage on? Joy Behar leaned forward again, but this time, there was something different in her eyes. Desperation. Her voice pitched higher, shriller. This is exactly the arrogance I expected from a man like you. Surrounded by yes-men your whole life, worshipped for being a Hollywood tough guy. But out here, Clint, this is real life. We hold people accountable." Clint didn't flinch. He didn't break his stare. He simply corrected her, voice low and level. 60 years. Not 50. And in those 60 years, I've learned that respect isn't demanded, it's earned. The words landed like thunder in the silent studio. The audience sat frozen, eyes darting between Joy and Clint. Some were in awe, some in disbelief. But all of them could feel the shifting tides. Joy looked around her panel for backup. Whoopi, Sunny, Sarah. But all she saw were tight lips and uncomfortable expressions. She was on her own. "You know what your real issue is, Clint," Joy said, desperation morphing into reckless defiance. "You can't handle women who speak their mind. You hate it when people challenge you. You come from an era where women were arm candy, accessories, not equals." For the first time, Clint smiled, a slow, dangerous grin that didn't reach his eyes. "I've worked with stronger women than you'll ever meet," he said, his voice steady. "Women who use their strength to build, to lead, to inspire, not to throw tantrums on daytime TV." The jab landed. Joy's smile twitched, her jaw tightened. But she wasn't backing down. "Oh, please," she snapped, waving her hand dismissively. "Name-dropping a few actresses doesn't make you some feminist icon. You built your fame playing violent men, Clint. You glorified violence. You made heroes out of bullies." Clint's posture remained relaxed, but there was steel beneath it. "And you built your career tearing people down, pretending to speak truth, while spewing bias and assumptions," he said. "You've never watched my films, have you, Joy?" The color drained from her face for a moment, but her mouth fired back. "I've seen enough. I don't need to sit through every cowboy shoot-'em-up to know what you represent." A murmur rippled through the audience. Clint leaned in just a bit, voice quiet, but slicing like a razor. "There it is. You've just admitted it. You're criticizing something you don't even understand. Judging work you've never studied, calling people names based on headlines and stereotypes." Joy's composure cracked further, but she powered through it. "I know exactly what you represent," she hissed. "You're a symbol of outdated masculinity, a relic from a time when men like you ran unchecked, where your word was law and everyone else just shut up." Clint's expression didn't change, but the glint in his eye sharpened. His voice dropped to that infamous Eastwood growl, cold, calculated. "You don't see people, you see symbols. You don't have conversations, you label, you accuse, you shout over everyone, and you call it activism." Joy's breathing quickened, her hands trembling slightly on the desk. She glanced again at the cameras, perhaps hoping the audience would be on her side. But the room was divided, uneasy, aware they were witnessing something raw, something real. Joy tried to rally. "I speak truth to power," she said. "Unlike you, I've used my platform to hold men like you accountable. I fight for women, for minorities, for justice." Clint shook his head, disappointment flashing across his face. "You don't speak truth," he said. "You perform outrage. You play to the cameras. You haven't asked me a single question about my work, my film, my life. You came here to attack, to belittle, not to listen." Joy stood, her chair screeching backward. Her voice grew louder, cracking. "I don't have to sit here and be lectured by you, Clint Eastwood. I don't have to tolerate being patronized by a man who represents everything toxic about America. Clint rose too, slowly, unfolding from his chair like a towering shadow. But there was no yelling, no fury. Just calm, unshakable power. I came here to have a conversation, he said, his voice echoing in the stillness. You turned it into a firing squad. You wanted to make me a villain. And in doing so, you've shown the world exactly who you are. Joy was visibly trembling now, but her mouth didn't stop. Your type is finished. Washed up. We don't need men like you anymore. Clint's reply was simple. Quiet. Devastating. No, Joy, the world doesn't need bullies disguised as activists. It needs honesty. It needs respect. It needs people who listen. She pointed toward the producers offstage, her words shrill. Are we really going to let him stand there and insult me like this? This is my show. Clint didn't move. He stared at her, then at the audience, then at the camera. The show is called The View, Joy, not The Joy Show. But maybe that's part of the problem. The line detonated in the room like dynamite. Gasps, whispers, shifting seats. Joy opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her facade crumbled, right there, for millions to see. Joy Behar stood frozen, fists clenched, breathing uneven, her carefully curated television persona unraveling before a live audience. Around her, the other hosts shifted uncomfortably, desperate to steer the conversation back to normalcy, but the damage was done. Clint Eastwood's unshakable calm had exposed every weak point in her argument. Her voice cracked, but still tried to bite. You think standing there, towering over me, makes you look like the bigger person? You're using your stature, your image, to intimidate me, to belittle me on my own platform. Clint didn't budge. His response came without hesitation, direct and controlled. No, Joy. I'm not trying to look like the bigger person. I'm just trying to be the adult in the room. The audience erupted into a low, involuntary murmur. The words cut deeper than shouting ever could. Joy tried to rally, pointing a shaky finger toward Clint. This is exactly why men like you are dangerous. You smile and act polite, but underneath it's all violence, aggression, intimidation wrapped in politeness. Clint's expression remained unreadable, but his tone hardened, the edge unmistakable. Politeness isn't aggression, Joy. Self-control isn't a weapon. And disagreeing with you isn't oppression. That's the problem with this conversation. Every time someone doesn't parrot your script, you brand them dangerous. Joy's hands trembled now, the righteous fury she leaned on slipping through her fingers. She shot a look to the producers, to the co-hosts, to the silent audience who seemed more captivated by Clint's unflinching composure than her fiery theatrics. Whoopi Goldberg finally broke the silence, her voice strained. Maybe we should move on to the movie. But Joy was too far gone, her pride too wounded. She raised her hand to silence her co-host. No, people need to see this. This is the problem in America. Powerful men like Clint think they can walk into a room, ignore the questions, sidestep accountability, and drown us out with smugness and outdated morals. Clint leaned forward, voice quieter but sharper than ever. No, Joy. I'm not ignoring questions. I'm ignoring nonsense. I'm ignoring character assassination, masquerading as journalism. I'm ignoring manufactured outrage meant to generate clicks instead of truth. Joy laughed, but it was hollow forced. You're used to being idolized, Clint. Worshipped. But not here. Here you don't get a free pass. Clint's lips twitched into a knowing grin. You think worship is what I want. You think applause makes a man. I built my life on discipline, on hard work, on respecting others whether they agreed with me or not. I don't need applause. But I won't stand here and be lied about either. Joy's nostrils flared. Her voice grew shrill, her words slamming through the thickening tension. You don't get to decide what truth is. You don't get to rewrite history because it makes you uncomfortable. Clint's smile faded, his eyes sharpening like steel cutting glass. No, Joy. But I do get to correct a lie when it's told to my face. You came after me today, with a script written, before I walked through that door. You didn't come here to listen. You came here to attack. You asked nothing about my career, my projects, my journey. You saw a target, not a person. The audience sat frozen, eyes darting between Joy's growing instability and Clint's immovable calm. Somewhere in the control room, producers whispered frantically, uncertain whether they were watching a disaster or the most unforgettable moment in daytime television history. Joy, growing louder, doubled down. I've spent my life fighting for women's rights, for equality, for justice while you... Clint cut in, his tone deadly calm. While I worked with powerful women, directed them, gave them the space to lead stories, produce, win awards, while you insult people you haven't met, criticize work you've never watched, and twist every conversation back to yourself. Joy's voice reached a fever pitch. You symbolize everything wrong with the world, this toxic masculinity, this glorification of violence. Clint's reply was slow, deliberate, every word piercing. You keep saying symbol, but I'm not a symbol. I'm a person. Maybe if you spent more time listening to people instead of labeling them, you'd actually understand the world you claim to be fixing. For the first time, Joy visibly faltered. Her next words stumbled out, lacking the earlier conviction. You don't understand, you're dismissing lived experiences. Clint didn't blink. No, I'm refusing to be your punching bag. There's a difference. A heavy silence settled over the studio. Joy's shoulders sagged, her armor cracked and dented by Clint's relentless dignity. She looked around again, but the support wasn't there. Even the audience, often quick to clap for conflict, remained quiet, uncertain where their sympathy should lie. Clint took a breath, calm and steady. You've accused me of everything from misogyny to ignorance, based on nothing but headlines and hearsay. You haven't listened. You haven't asked. You just assumed. That's not power, Joy, that's fear disguised as strength. Joy tried one final lunge, her voice desperate. You're walking away because you can't handle it. Clint straightened his jacket, his eyes still locked on hers. No, Joy. I'm walking away because I won't be part of your performance any longer. Clint stood there, tall and composed, letting the weight of his words linger in the heavy air. Joy Behar, who had started the interview riding high on confidence, now looked cornered, her arguments dismantled, her accusations deflected with precision. She opened her mouth to retort, but no words came out. Her chest heaved with shallow breaths as the silence swallowed the room. I don't need to perform outrage to validate myself, Clint continued, his voice unwavering. And I sure as hell don't need to sit through a circus act dressed up as journalism. The studio was silent, save for the quiet whirring of cameras capturing every devastating moment. The audience, once buzzing with anticipation, now sat in a stunned hush. Joy's co-hosts looked away, their earlier smirks erased, replaced by tight-lipped discomfort. Joy slammed her hand on the table. This is why people like you need to be confronted. You've coasted through decades without ever being challenged. Clint shook his head, a slight chuckle escaping him. You think this is the first time someone's come after me, Joy? I've spent 60 years dealing with tougher opponents than you, critics, politicians, the press, you name it. The difference is, most of them had facts, not just noise. Joy's face flushed crimson. She leaned forward, desperation fueling her next words. You're walking away because you've been exposed, Clint. You've been shown for who you really are, a relic clinging to relevance. Clint's eyes narrowed just slightly. No, Joy. I'm walking away because you've shown everyone who you are. A host who'd rather shout down her guest than have a meaningful conversation. You didn't want to listen. You wanted a viral clip. Congratulations, you got one. The producers were frozen behind the glass. They wanted to cut to commercial, but they knew they were witnessing broadcast history. The control room director's hand hovered over the button, but never pressed it. Joy's voice cracked. This is MY Show. You don't get to come here and lecture me. Clint stepped forward, towering but never aggressive, his voice remaining that same chilling calm. And yet here we are. Joy's lips quivered as she grasped at her final line of defense, turning to the audience. Do you see this? This is what happens when a woman challenges the old Hollywood system, when we refuse to be quiet. Clint's reply was swift, direct, undeniable. No, this is what happens when you substitute hostility for honesty, when you replace questions with accusations, when you attack instead of listen. You could have asked me about my career, my philosophy, my work with actors, my reflections on the industry. But you didn't. You came with a script, and you stuck to it. Joy's gaze darted wildly between the audience and the camera, visibly unraveling. Her once sharp tongue, now tripping over every word. I was holding you accountable. Accountable for what? Clint pressed, his voice low but powerful. For a version of me that exists only in your imagination? For your own insecurities projected onto my face? Joy staggered back into her chair, speechless, her co-host silent, realizing the tide had turned completely against her. Clint turned to address the room, his voice filling every corner of the studio. You don't get to define people by your own prejudices, Joy. You don't get to decide who someone is without taking the time to understand them. You've spent this whole time telling me who I am, while I've spent my life showing people through action, through work, through respect. Then Clint did something unexpected. He looked directly into the camera, addressing not just the people in the room, but the millions watching from their homes. To everyone watching, he said steadily, don't ever let yourself be boxed in by someone else's narrative. Don't allow loud voices to drown out truth. Respect is earned, not demanded. Dignity is preserved by walking away from senseless hostility, not engaging in it. Joy's shoulders sank lower into a seat, the fight evaporating from her frame. Her eyes darted to the floor, then to the producers, seeking escape. Clint turned back to her one last time. You could have had a conversation. Instead, you chose confrontation. You could have asked, but you accused. You could have listened, but you shouted. And the result is right here for everyone to see. Joy's final attempt was a whisper, hollow and weak. You won't silence me. Clint nodded slightly. I wouldn't dream of it. You can talk all you want, Joy. But don't confuse being the loudest person in the room with being right. With that, Clint calmly unpinned his microphone, handing it off to a nearby assistant, then stood tall and walked toward the exit. Every step echoed through the silent studio like a hammer striking steel. As he reached the edge of the set, Clint paused, looking back at the audience, his expression resolute. And for anyone wondering, real strength isn't about dominating people. It's about standing firm when others try to tear you down. It's about keeping your integrity when others lose theirs. That's the only strength that lasts. And with that, he walked off the stage, leaving behind a room full of stunned silence, a host crushed beneath the weight of her own hostility, and a legacy reinforced not by aggression, but by unbreakable composure. Joy sat alone at the desk, staring at the exit where Clint had vanished, her bravado broken, her arrogance exposed, her reputation in pieces. And in that moment, everyone understood. There's a reason why Clint Eastwood remains a legend, not because he shouts the loudest, but because he knows exactly when to say nothing at all, and walk away. If you enjoyed this intense showdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping Hollywood confrontations. Whose side are you on? Clint's calm composure or Joy's fierce challenge? Comment below and join the debate.